ask Roti to, we're looking at creating 15 million jobs in the next 3-4 years. You've heard what the Honorable Minister has said. What's your perspective on the skills that we need in this economy? GE, you work in multiple sectors, obviously. So how are you confronting that challenge? What skills do you need, and how are you going about getting them in our economy?
Great. So again, I mean, great to be here. You know, like you said, you know, GE, 300,000 employees globally in multiple countries, and I lead a learning function for Africa. Now, from a skills perspective, it's a burden, really, if you think a little bit about the, you know, building the skills for employees, but also sort of building the skills that are required that we're going to hire in the future. So when I think a little bit about what those skills are, I mean, it's an infrastructure company, so technical skills, vocational skills are absolutely paramount to build. When we think about the future of work, so, I mean, and maybe talk a little bit about, you know, the kind of skills that, not just the hard skills, but the soft skills as well. So skills around critical thinking, complex problem solving, and then there, you know, a whole lot of skills that needs to be built to be able to talk to these challenges. But if we talk very specifically about, you know, what G is doing, and I'll maybe like to talk about it in maybe 3 different buckets. When I think about, you know, tertiary education and TVET, I mean, one of the examples is, you know, if we're graduating electrical engineers, mechanical engineers today, the kind of skills that they come out with today is completely different from what is required tomorrow. So as a digital company, you know, the factories that we have now have to have, you know, we call them brilliant factories. We have to have a, you know, virtual version of them, which means that the kind of skills you need are digital skills. So being able to see data, you know, the concept of Internet of Things is very, very, you know, predominant now. So what do you do with data? How do you predict data? How can you have more predictive maintenance around that? At an engineering level, it's important that, you know, we partner very deliberately with institutions, academia, to sort of start to think of what does a new mechanical engineer look like? What does a new electrical engineer look like that will be able to join a company like GE, Siemens, and any of the other organizations that play as well. When I think about what we are doing as well in the in Lagos with the garages as well, you know, when we think about the informal sector and vocational education, you know, we have the garages, and with the garages, you know, it's building out, you know, how can you start to empower SMEs and entrepreneurs to start to build on 3D printing, you know, creating, you know, items, you know, in the retail sector, just creating the type of skills that are required for you not to be able to have a local supply chain in an industrial sector. So extremely important that we think about TVET and vocational education in a completely different way, but also think about sustainability. How can we ensure that, you know, within our vocational institutions, we have standardized curriculum in that area. Another area that we're particularly passionate about is entrepreneurship education, right? You know, last year we ran the University Business Challenge where, you know, I think it's very critical that not do we just teach people how to start businesses, but how do you use simulations, right, to make decisions? How do you sort of ensure that the whole concept of pedagogy, faculty development around entrepreneurship education is key? So a lot of the programs that we're doing in Nigeria and across the continent as well is how can we lay emphasis on entrepreneurship education, and then how can we use things like online learning as well to make sure that we scale the skills in a very deliberate way.
Thank you. Yeah.
The other thing we're doing as well is that we're looking at SMEs, very similar to GE. We have a global partner we're working with, and we're going to the states and we're saying we know the state governments also have their own ambitions. Vocational training takes a while. I talked about 3.5-year programs. The minimum you can have is 12 months, and that's for artisanal skills. That's for very basic skills. What can you do in the short term, and what can you do for a larger mass of people? It's about training potential entrepreneurs, given them, enabling them with digital technology so they're able to key into global markets, they're able to network, they're able to upscale and multiply their yield. Even if it's in agriculture, you're seeing where they're using digital tools to increase yield. If it's within just trade and retail, they're using digital tools to market their products, to connect to potential buyers. They're also innovating. They're creating new platforms for growth. So we're setting up centers. We're starting with one in Lagos State. It will be a pilot for us. So yes, G is a bit ahead of us, but just beware, because it's not going to take long. And the idea is that we replicate this across key locations in the country.
I'm going to ask Roti to respond to that from two perspectives. First, GE's activities in terms of promoting entrepreneurship education, creating the mindset that we're talking about, and also other skills. Basically, how do we need things that we can take to scale if we're going to reach the 15 million we're talking about. What's GE doing and how can we leverage on that?
So just to talk to the entrepreneurship education and just a direct sort of practical action for a SMEDA, or I think the first thing is, we shouldn't be competing when it comes to skills for Nigeria. So I think that's the first thing. So a G and a Siemens must be able to come to the table together and see, how can we do this together at scale? The second thing is, we need to think a little bit about standardization in terms of curriculum. So we don't really know today the kind of quality of entrepreneurship education that is being delivered, and there's probably different versions of it. So when you think about, standardized curriculum like the, International Labour Organization, and how they've implemented that in different markets, it's really important to sort of take those types of curriculum and think a little bit about in which areas and which sort of, government parastatals or academics or, enterprise, departments in universities, can we get that sort of standardization? So I'll give you what we're doing, for instance, in GE was, for instance, we took about 20 universities in Nigeria last year and sort of took them through an entrepreneurial business challenge, right? And this was in the use of business simulations, because if you think about the entrepreneurs, before they actually get to work, to start to create jobs, they need to be able to have visualized what it looks like and have the right type of platforms to be able to run a business, even in a simulated world. So we're thinking about, so we're doing exactly the same thing across 26 universities in South Africa, and we're thinking about what that looks like in the different countries as well, so that the whole spirit around entrepreneurial leadership and how you use the right type of quality curriculum to sort of build that skills will be scalable. So I think the important thing is we just need to think about how do we partner effectively. So, we're not really competitors in this space now. How do we partner effectively and use sort of the public sector as a baseline to crowd the right industry players together to deliver quality entrepreneurship education? I think that's really critical.
To collaborate under one sort of umbrella. But that's just almost like trying to bring government together. We now need to take it one step further, or several steps further, but one step at a time, of saying how do we link it to what, and I like the point that was made by my friend from GE about, when it comes to the greater good and the environment, we all collaborate. We all come together to work, because it's a win-win, it creates. And so the next thing is, how do we engage with you, the companies, and the associations, or should I say, trade bodies or groups like NESG, to make sure that there are specific initiatives, projects that we're doing that will achieve ends and purposes that we agree, will make a difference.
So Young, let me ask you now. You've heard from Roti about the importance of critical thinking skills. We've heard about digital awareness. You came into that space with Gnowbe. Can you give us, from your perspective, from what's happening in Singapore and your experience as well, what should we be looking at in terms of skill requirements in the next 3 to 5 years, and how do we begin to acquire those skills on scale?
Thank you, Toogun. I think this whole idea, and I really love what we're talking about in terms of future skills. And when we say future, it's not like 2100 future. Future is like today in the next 3 to 5 years, because the pace of change has happened so rapidly. So as many of you probably know and have seen the World Economic Forum and the McKinsey reports, that maybe in the next few years, 30 to 50% of tasks or jobs are going to be irrelevant and will be replaced by machines, by robotics, by artificial intelligence. I can't help myself, but as I walk around in Nigeria, I take taxis, I think, this person will likely not have a job in a few years. I go to the retail stores, and I think this person will likely not have a job in a few years. You walk around and you cannot help when you start to realize this is a reality. This is not fiction. This is not a sci-fi movie. This is the reality we're living in today. And many companies today are already planning headcount reductions, and people are being laid off because they're being replaced. So then the question you ask is then, how are we going to compete with machines that think faster, process faster, and can do rote tasks much better than a human will ever be able to do? Our current education system was based on the Industrial Revolution. Back in the day, we didn't have machines. We had to create the black Ford car. I'm American, by the way. So, right, in America, so we had to create these black Ford cars. You had to train people on English and math, reading and math, so they could operate the machines and they could produce the same car, the same quality, consistently and as efficiently as possible, over and over again. So you had the current education system with one teacher, 40 students, in this kind of a format where I had all the information and knowledge, you didn't, so you had to take notes and try to pay attention and remember as much as you could. I hope some of it stuck, but I don't expect all of it to, right? That was actually the model. You look at the current education system and the mindsets we have today, they're exactly the same. But the problem is today is you don't need that mechanized, efficient, you don't need people to behave like robots anymore because we already have them. So what are the top skills required that are really unique to what it means to be human? It's actually the soft skills that Roti is talking about. Humans need to develop skills in critical thinking, in creativity, in communication skills. Empathy and the ability to engage with other human beings is important and will continue to be more important.
Roti, quick one from you, jumping off from what Soyoung said. And I'm going to link that to the comments we had from Onyeche before in terms of private sector providing curriculum and using this online platform. What's your experience been like at GE?
Yeah, so I think, for instance, recently we built out an oil and gas academy where we provided student licenses for about 500 students to be able to do online gas training online at university level. I think that, when you start to have sort of national platforms, so for instance, I'll give an example, maybe, if the SciWares, where everyone goes through an internship at the, with the Industrial Training Fund, they have access to a marketplace where they can actually take online learning. Corporate bodies can provide content. I think that's absolutely key. And when you start to have micro-certification, accreditation, then you can reach those numbers and scale much quicker. So, NYSC, every year, hundreds and hundreds of graduates go through that. What sort of standardized platforms are available where we can provide corporate content and academic content for them to actually have additional skills? I think it's key to be able to take advantage of that.
And there won't be challenges recognizing the certification because you provided the curriculum?
Correct.
Okay, good. First.
Yeah, so just a closing statement. I think it's been a great conversation. 3 things we would like to leave here with. Transparency from the government. All the initiatives that are happening, we would like to know a lot more about them so that we don't reinvent the wheel. The second thing is speed. So I think it's very important that we go out of here, if there's going to be a crowding of industry partners to work together around this, then let's execute with speed. I think the final thing is, and Joy mentioned as well, is we're accountable to localize in Nigeria and across the continent. So if the plans are there and we're collectively at the same table with those plans, we will come to the table. I think that's it. Thank you.